The Senate Finance Committee chamber thrummed with electric tension, the air heavy with the weight of a high-stakes debate that would shape the discourse on American health care. Senator John Neely Kennedy, the razor-sharp Republican from Louisiana, sat poised at his seat, his calm demeanor and glinting glasses belying a fierce resolve to champion truth and reason. His steady gaze swept the room, taking in the assembled lawmakers, staffers, and media, all poised for the clash to unfold. Across the table, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont launched into a fiery opening, his voice booming through the chamber like a thunderclap, as he accused the American medical establishment of being wholly corrupted by the pharmaceutical industry's deep pockets. Brandishing a stack of papers like a sword, Sanders claimed the American Medical Association, representing hundreds of thousands of doctors, was thoroughly co-opted, alongside the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Public Health Association. He urged Americans to distrust their doctors' advice on vaccines, particularly those for COVID-19, pointing to soaring drug prices and campaign contributions as irrefutable evidence of a system rigged by corporate greed. The pharmaceutical industry's greed is pervasive. Sanders declared, his gestures broad and emphatic, his voice rising to a crescendo that echoed off the chamber walls. They charge the highest prices in the world, and they've got their hands on the AMA, the pediatricians, everyone. How can we trust a system so deeply influenced by corporate cash? Kennedy, unruffled, leaned into his microphone, his southern drawl slicing through the charged atmosphere like a blade honed by years of principled debate. "There's a big difference, Senator," he began, locking eyes with Sanders, his voice steady but laced with an unmistakable firmness. "There's a difference between established science and these wild, reckless claims that tear down the trust Americans place in their healthcare system." His words carried the weight of his long record advocating for transparency in drug pricing, while staunchly defending the integrity of medical science. "You're telling the American people that the AMA, which has fought for patients since 1847, is just a pawn of Big Pharma, that the pediatricians vaccinating our kids are corrupt. That's a dangerous game, Senator." He cited the Lancet study, which demonstrated that COVID vaccines prevented nearly 20 million deaths in their first year, a towering testament to the power of rigorous science. "These vaccines got folks back to work, saved countless lives, and you're out here sowing doubt without a shred of credible evidence to back it up?" Kennedy pressed his tone sharp, but measured, never veering into personal attack, a hallmark of his disciplined approach. Sanders doubled down, his face reddening, as he leaned forward, his voice booming with indignation. "Big Pharma's greedy, Senator," he shot back. "They've got the AMA, the pediatricians, the whole medical establishment in their pocket, and they're charging Americans more than anyone else on the planet." He pointed to campaign donations, alleging that politicians were bought and paid for by pharma money, undermining the scientific consensus on vaccines. "How can we trust a system so deeply influenced by corporate cash?" He demanded, his words aimed at rattling the committee and stirring the audience watching from the gallery and beyond, their murmurs rippling through the room. Kennedy didn't flinch. "Let's talk facts, Senator," he countered, his voice carrying the cadence of a seasoned debater who knew how to command a room without raising his volume. "I've fought pharma's excesses myself, pushed bills to crack down on those middlemen, jacking up drug prices, backed transparency, so folks aren't fleeced at the pharmacy counter. But to say every doctor, every scientist, every organization is bought and paid for, that's not just wrong, it's reckless." He highlighted the AMA's tireless work in lowering healthcare costs from rural Louisiana clinics to urban hospitals, and the pediatricians' pivotal role in eradicating diseases like measles through vaccination programs. You're throwing shade at the very people who've made America healthier, Kennedy said, shaking his head with a mix of bemusement and resolve. You want to talk campaign money? Fine. I've taken contributions from individuals just like you. Does that make us corrupt? Or does it mean we're working in a system that needs reform, not a wrecking ball? The room grew quiet as Kennedy pressed his point, the weight of his words settling over the committee like a clarifying fog. You're telling folks not to trust their doctors, he continued, his voice steady but pointed. But what's your alternative? A handful of fringe voices over the consensus of hundreds of thousands of experts. That's not science. That's chaos. He challenged Sanders to name credible organizations backing his claims, knowing full well the answer would be thin. Sanders mentioned a few advisors, Marty McCary, Jay Baccara, and others. But Kennedy was quick to strike. A few names don't stack up against the AMA, the American Heart Association, or the global scientific community, he said, his voice rising just enough to underscore the stark disparity. These groups aren't perfect, but they're built on evidence, peer review, and decades of saving lives. You're asking Americans to ditch that for suspicion, Kennedy wove in vivid examples from his home state of Louisiana, where rural hospitals depended on federal support and scientific advancements to serve communities battered by poverty. I've seen what happens when trust in medicine falters, he said, his tone carrying the weight of personal experience. Vaccine hesitancy spikes, preventable diseases creep back, and folks in places like Shreveport or New Orleans pay the price. He countered Sanders' claim that a recent health care bill would gut rural hospitals. That bill's bringing billions to places that need it most. Community health centers, nursing homes, rural clinics, Kennedy said, correcting the record with surgical precision. We're not cutting health care. We're making it stronger, smarter, fairer. Sanders pushed back, his frustration mounting. Everyone but you is corrupt, Senator. Is that what you're saying? Kennedy chuckled softly, a disarming grin spreading across his face, easing the tension in the room. No, sir. I'm saying we all operate in a flawed system, but that doesn't make the science flawed. The medical community, the entire medical community agrees vaccines are safe and effective. You've got the AMA pediatricians, public health experts, all on one side. Who are your sources? A few contrarian doctors. That's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. As Sanders named his advisors again, Kennedy dismantled the argument further. Marty McCary, Jay Baccara. They're individuals with opinions, sure, but opinions aren't data. I'm talking organizations representing hundreds of thousands of doctors and scientists backed by mountains of evidence. He leaned forward, his voice measured but forceful. There's a big difference between established science and fringe theories co-opted by misinformation. The exchange grew intense, but Kennedy remained composed. Hold on, Sanders interrupted. So you're saying the AMA has been co-opted and people shouldn't trust their doctors? No, Kennedy replied firmly. I'm saying the opposite. You're the one casting doubt. Everybody isn't corrupt. But those who twist facts for political gain are doing a disservice. Your loony talking points are an insult to the professionals saving lives every day. Kennedy shifted to the healthcare bill in question. This bill you're railing against, it's infusing federal dollars into rural healthcare like never before. Sure, there are cuts in some areas, but we're redirecting funds to community health centers and nursing homes. In Louisiana, that means keeping doors open in small towns where folks drive hours for care. Your math, cutting $150 billion, but bringing back $50 billion, isn't a net loss when it's targeted efficiently. Sanders countered. It's throwing millions off health care, raising premiums, devastating rural areas. No, Kennedy corrected. It's reforming a broken system to ensure quality care without bankrupting the nation. It's about prevention, innovation, accountability. Kennedy delved deeper into vaccine science to bolster his case. These vaccines were a feat of global collaboration vetted by the FDA, monitored for safety. They saved millions. Celebrate that, don't denigrate it. Sanders interjected, "The industry's influence is pervasive." Kennedy smiled, his calm unshaken. "I agree, prices are too high. That's why I've backed laws to negotiate drug costs, import cheaper drugs from Canada, and cap seniors' expenses. But the scientific establishment is our ally in holding pharma accountable, not the enemy." He cited the AMA's advocacy for patient protections and the pediatricians' campaigns against childhood diseases like polio and measles. When you cast doubt on them, you're telling parents to question the experts keeping their kids safe. That's not progress. It's a step backward. Sanders tried the campaign finance angle again. "Republicans take pharma money. Are they all corrupt?" Kennedy replied swiftly. "The system's flawed, and I voted for transparency reforms to fix it. But that doesn't